Hi, folks, and welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Roger Nathaniel Ashtier.
I'm John Pock.
And I'm Colin Chan.
Hey, so we're going to talk about WandaVision today. We're going to talk about the first and second episode. But before that, I want to jump over to the beginning of those episodes and just play what we haven't heard in a little while. How did you guys feel about hearing this for the first time in over a year?
A welcome return for Marvel Studios. Everyone's been looking forward to it, so I was excited.
I think that this is a new era in Marvel, and I really am looking forward to it and being very excited about it.
Yeah, it was definitely welcomed after the year that we've had. I'm glad that Marvel's back. So before we jump into the episode, I want to reorient the audience on where we left Wanda and Vision, because this show is about Wanda and Vision. This is the last we saw of Vision in Infinity War. So yeah, that was Vision, and this was on Wanda's reaction.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
You will.
And this is the last time we saw Wanda in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wish there was a way that I could let her know.
She knows. We both do.
So that's where Wanda and Vision were at the end of the Infinity War saga. But we have a series now based upon these two characters. So it's curious, given where we saw Vision, how we have a series. So I guess that's definitely the mystery of the show. Just one more clip from Endgame as clarity on how powerful Wanda is before we jump into the episode.
Fire! Messiah, our troops, just do it!
Yeah, so reminder, she could have probably taken Thanos out by herself, but for the ships.
Right.
So we find Wanda
About today's day?
and Vision a situation like this.
What's the question you?
Mm-hmm.
It's very reminiscent of sitcoms in the 50s, 4:3 aspect ratio. What did you guys think of the episodes in general before we start breaking down, I guess, the scenes?
I think it was a great presentation of how they're trying to invoke and utilize nostalgia with the classic type of sitcoms from the past. I like the format of how they're trying to do that, in addition to setting up a lot of suspense and mystery in the way to present. So it's definitely got me wanting more.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's very nostalgic as well. Also, the themes of the classic sitcom shows, and also the I heard online that there was some pushback about the black and white aspect of it, and I think that we have to understand that a lot of MCU fans might be taken aback by the fact that it's in black and white and it's not widescreen, and there are tropes that are there that might be very unusual for a lot of MCU fans that are of a certain age.
Yeah, I appreciate it because I think as John was saying, I was, of course, not alive when shows like this were produced, but I mean, I've seen in reruns like I Love Lucy. I think this first episode is supposed to be based upon Dick Van Dyke, but I never watched that show. But the first episode is also reminiscent of I Love Lucy for me. The second episode is reminiscent of Bewitched which we'll get to in a little while. I appreciate it. I see what they're doing, and I don't know if I want to see 22 episodes in black and white, but I appreciate how true they were to the form back then when they're trying to recreate these episodes. It's really cool to see that.
Yeah, definitely the acting. You can tell the style of acting that was required to do such sitcoms, and I appreciated that. They paid attention to that and tried to reenact all those things. Very different from what we usually see in modern movies and TV shows.
Yeah, they're definitely acting in a broader way. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and one other point is about the live audience, and that's also something that a lot of fans might not be familiar with. Is that back in the day there were a lot of shows that had a live audience, even back into the 90s and stuff. But again, there's a contingent of MCU fans that probably are not familiar with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's some studio audience shows. There's some studio audience comedies still in existence, but I think that's gone out of fashion over the last couple of decades. So this whole multicam setup might be foreign to a lot of people.
From what I understand, they're going to try to hit upon the various eras of the types of sitcoms in the near future as well, in future episodes.
Yeah. All right, so let's keep going. So the first 2 episodes are based on the Dick Van Dyke Show, which ran from 1961 to 1966. Bewitched ran from 1964 to 1972, but from 1964 to 66, it was in black and white, and then it was in color, which is going to become important at the end of the second episode of WandaVision.
Hello, dear. I'm Agnes, your neighbor to the right. My right, not yours. Forgive me for not stopping by sooner to welcome you to the block. My mother-in-law was in town, so I wasn't.
And this is the introduction to the Nosy Neighbor, which is also a trope in a lot of these shows. I think in these 2 episodes don't know a lot about Agnes, and she seems a little suspicious. And I should say on the outset that this is going to just be a review and a breakdown of this episode. We'll get into our predictions based upon what we've seen in a separate video. We don't want to spoil future episodes by predicting things for people, so we'll do that in a separate video. So yeah. This is just an image from the Dick Van Dyke Show from that era. Like we said, very, very similar aesthetic. I think the living room even looks very similar.
Correct. Look at that chair to the right of the picture. It's almost exactly the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, I just want to mention one thing about tropes, Nathan, is that the trope of the husband or of a relative that doesn't appear on screen but gets talked about during the episode is also another classic trope.
Yeah, I think that they did that even in more recent sitcoms, like I think Frasier, his brother would talk about his wife Maris, and I don't think she ever showed up on screen.
Yeah, I don't think she ever did.
So this scene actually has a lot to talk about. So first we see Vision using his super speed, which you would see in the MCU movies, but they're using special effects from the 50s. They're just speeding up the video, which is another, like I said, I appreciate them using the special effects from the era so that it doesn't seem out of place. Another thing that is interesting here, even though they kept to the era, this show is far more diverse than you would see back in the day. I think his colleague here is, I think we looked it up before the show, and his colleague here is Indian. You wouldn't have seen that on a show in the 50s.
Yeah.
There you go.
They also wouldn't have been playing black music in the middle of a sitcom in the 50s.
Hey, is there something I can help you with, buddy?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there is. Would you be so good as to tell me what it is we do here exactly? Do we make something?
No.
Right. Do we buy or sell something?
No and no.
Then what is the purpose of this company?
Yeah, and Vision seems just as confused as we are about his situation. He's trying to play his role, but he's also, because he's a robot, scratching at the surface because he's confused about what's going on here. And into this episode, we also get classic commercials, but very Marvel commercials.
For clever housewives.
Say, this machine has some shine.
You said it. Set the dial and get the taste back into your toast.
And that right there was a very Iron Man repulsor sound.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed that as well. There's a repulsor sound, like when he's charging up, right? Before.
Eating elephants can handle anything.
Yeah.
From meatloaf to cherry pie to open-faced cheese sandwiches.
This sounds like a bomb about to go off for some reason.
Yeah, pretty much.
And also, if you notice there, this is the first time you see color in this episode. And it's actually the only time you see color in this episode. A second ago, it wasn't red. Now it is red.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we'll get into what we think those things are in a separate video, but it's just interesting to point out.
By Stark Industries. Forget the past. This.
And as you said, the Stark tech is definitely there. Around this era, Howard Stark would have been, I guess, creating toasters and weapons. So there's a nice little tie-in there to Stark Industries.
The slogan in the toaster commercial was talking about forgetting your past, and I thought that was very interesting to point that out. In a way, it's kind of like moving into phase 4, but also in a way it's talking about Wanda's past, forgetting it, and then moving on to a future.
Yeah, it seems to be invoking that.
How very atmospheric.
What's going on here, Vision? You blow a fuse?
Pardon me while I just go and fetch the lady of the house.
And then here we have another one of the sitcom tropes, too, just a misunderstanding.
Guess who?
Yeah, the silly misunderstanding.
Wanda!
Yeah, he's sure mistaken that bald head for Vision.
It doesn't make sense in something more grounded. Well, more grounded than the MCU movies, but it's definitely sitcom logic here.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you...
Sitcom logic until we get to the end.
Oh, Arthur, stop
in
it.
this scene.
Stop it.
And the camera angles change.
Stop it.
Correct. If you notice the movement of the camera now, the way it's kind of slowly zooming in.
Exactly. Before it
keeping
was
the
just
constant motion.
Right. Before it was just a multi-camera setup, like which all sitcoms.
Yep. All static before.
Right.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
Vision, help him.
That's Vision's Heimlich.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I think we're definitely supposed to read something into that. Of course, it's the only part of the show where they're not using the multicam format. So this, if you're not familiar with this, again, because of old sitcoms, they shot all the shows with multiple cameras running at the same time. So just to make it cheaper and easier to edit, because they had, especially for like soap operas and things like that, they had to crank those out very quickly. So they just got multiple angles and then cut to those angles. But they switched to single cam during this scene, and I think that's probably the outside coming in. So then we go to the end of the episode, rather. The classic episode ending. And we zoom out, it seems like they're being observed here. And there's a few things here that you can actually see. You can definitely see the Sword logo here. Mm-hmm. So they're being absorbed by Sword.
Yeah. And
inside the MCU, apparently Sword is supposed to be the Sentient Weapon Observation Response Division. John, do you remember from the comic book what the Sword was
Sure. The only difference is the W. It's a world in the comics. It's a sentient world observation response division.
Right. And from the comics, I think you might know a little bit more about how. I mean, I guess what they did. Can you talk to that? Speak to that.
Sure. Originally, it was an offshoot of Shield, and in more recent comics, in the last several years or last couple decades of it, they focus more on the outer worlds or space type of enforcement of some sort. So think of it as Space Shield.
Right.
And this is issue number 1 of the Sword publication. And in there, as you can see, Beast is in there, along with some otherworldly creatures as part of the team.
Yeah. Beast, a Marvel character from the X-Men. So let's jump to, I guess, the second episode.
Blast. Monica should really determine the source of that sound. Look how you seized on the opportunity to redecorate.
This is better, isn't it?
There's another trope from the era that all the couples slept in separate beds for television because of censors. But it changed as they moved into the 60s, late 60s into the 70s. So in the second episode, we're transitioning from Dick Van Dyke to Bewitched, and we're seeing the transition actually in the episode as well.
Wanda, darling.
Yes, dear.
Get the light.
Yeah, and here you see an example of the Dick Van Dyke Show, how they had the 2 separate beds.
Right.
We also saw 2 separate beds from the I Love Lucy show as well. So definitely harkening back to those shows.
Right.
WandaVision.
Very Bewitched opening. I used to love the show when I was a kid.
Right.
Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, I think, had very similar animated opening. So
Correct.
That's obviously what they're doing it in homage to. This entire episode is an homage to Bewitched. Her hairstyle is exactly like I think her name was Samantha.
Samantha.
Yeah.
Samantha. Yep.
Yeah, she has a Samantha haircut. And then we hear that sound at the beginning, and we hear it again here. And this is the first bit of color in this episode. And we also see at the end of this clip
So this was yet another sign of something weird is going on, and everything is not what they seem. And at the same time, like you just said, Nathan, there's
sword
another
logo.
sword logo on
sword
that
logo.
helicopter. And the
And also
colors.
The colors being Iron Man. Yeah.
they're
Iron Man
they're
colors.
definitely Iron Man colors.
Yep.
Dottie, and it'll be smooth sailing from here on out.
I think
Just
we
mind
mentioned
your P's and Q's, and you're
we
going to
mentioned
just
Agnes
fine.
earlier as well.
Dottie,
There's definitely something
Dottie,
weird with her.
Dottie,
So
and
that's
it'll
why I
be
have this
smooth
clip.
sailing from here on out.
You'll notice
Just
that
mind
she
your P's
pauses in
and
a
Q's,
weird
and
way.
you're going to do just fine.
Or maybe I could just be myself, more or less.
Too long of a pause. There's definitely something wrong with her. There's definitely something up with her.
Recognize the antique footlights? It's because they're from my store.
Again, far more
And the
diversity than you would see in shows back then.
I'm sorry, Dottie. I didn't ask about the chairs.
So you better not ask me if you can chair any committees in the future.
Because I'm afraid to move. I actually don't know what I'm doing here. I'm starting to feel that way myself. I'm Wanda. I'm Geraldine.
So Geraldine there doesn't seem like she knew her name, which is also curious, and maybe also tells us a little bit about what's going on as well.
Except to share. Norm here's a communist.
I think the last time I saw Paul Bettany doing comedy was in A Knight's Tale. And he's very good at it.
He is very good at it.
Right in Westview.
I haven't. You don't really see him do it very often. He has really good comic time.
Yeah, this character acting right now just reminds me so much of that Chaucer character from that movie.
More 60s animation.
And then also during that time, there was a lot of fear of communism at that time in history. So that was just a playback to that, callback to that.
Yeah, and I think that whole scene is interesting in a couple of ways. You see Vision in the first episode trying to figure out what's going on. He's confused. He's constantly trying to figure out what's going on at his company, what's going on in the neighborhood. And people keep trying to rebuff him. So that's another reason why that scene was particularly interesting. And then we jump back to Dottie and Wanda.
Of course not. Who are you?
Wanda. Who's going to see Wanda? Wanda. Wanda. Wanda.
Dottie!
And get a bit more color again. We don't know what that means. Whenever something weird is happening, we get more color.
They say a man is never fully dressed.
And another ad.
Two important accessories. His special lady. And his Strucker. Strucker. He'll make time for you.
They were the same couple that was in the first commercial too.
It's the same. Is it the same people? Is it
the same people?
And she just has a different hairdo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we want to speculate who they are?
Probably not in this video, but I have no idea.
I'll save it for the next video.
I didn't even notice that the first time I've watched those two clips several times.
Yeah.
They definitely dressed her to look like Lucille Ball in the first one.
But yeah, a particular note for that scene for our viewers is the Strucker, harkening back to again Baron von Strucker, the bad guy that was in Avengers: Age of Ultron, and this is the guy who created Wanda and Pietro, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch.
Right.
Yeah.
So both the commercials have callbacks to Age of Ultron.
They have callbacks to Age of Ultron, but they also have callbacks to people that have been instrumental in Wanda's life. So Stark's family, of course, rained down bombs on Wanda's parents' house, and they died. And then Von Strucker experimented on her. You can see the Hydra symbol on the comic version of him, but she saw on the watch. So yeah,
correct.
Definitely connections to Wanda in both of the commercials that we get.
Are you sure you don't want an audience volunteer named my husband Ralph?
And then here, this magic box obviously has a picture of the Mind Stone, right?
Yeah. So that symbol that's on there was Colin had mentioned prior to the video is that it definitely looks like the Mind Stone, and we'll see in our next picture that it definitely seems to be the Mind Stone.
Right.
You see on his forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just might be an Easter egg, or it might have some deeper meaning, but just something that we noticed.
Right.
You need some popcorn.
So the end of this episode, a lot of stuff happens. So we cut this up in a little bit. So Wanda's instantly pregnant, which is interesting, seeing as how they've been talking about for the children for the entire episode.
Yep. So lots of stuff. Even in the previous episode, the first episode, his boss and his boss's wife, when they were there for dinner, and she kept bugging her about, do you have any children? Why not? Why not? So
yeah, and Agnes also asked in this episode, and she asked in the previous episode as well about children.
And voila, she's pregnant.
Yes.
It's that easy.
Yeah.
Well, we did have that scene that we showed earlier with them in the bed, so maybe that's what happened.
Oh yeah! Wow.
So they hear the same sound. They go outside, and they see this weird thing.
What is that?
This guy in the beekeeper suit, he has the sword logo on his back as well.
Mm-hmm.
So from the first 2 episodes, it seems like Vision is definitely confused. Wanda is confused at times, but she definitely here it's obvious that she has some control over what's happening. She says no.
Right.
Rewinds stuff back to where she was happy.
Mm-hmm.
Is this really happening?
Yes, my love. It's really happening.
Oh.
They definitely have a lot of chemistry. You can see that they actually love each other in both of these episodes. They probably had more screen time on these episodes than they had in all of the MCU movies. More lines.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think that that even in the movies, they did not really flesh out their relationship very well.
No,
I think that there was a lot of, in Civil War, there was a lot of this like, will they or won't they, and it's kind of very weird type of flirting-ish type of thing going. And even in Age of Ultron, it was just like a couple of scenes of
a glance, right?
Her staring at him,
right?
Yeah, that glance thing. So you really didn't get any type of vibe from them that they were going to be a couple in those movies.
Yeah, and then they put them together in Infinity War, and they were apparently lovers on the run. So I mean, I like that they spend some time fleshing them out and actually showing that they have real affection for each other in these episodes, because quite frankly, I mean the movies that they're in are overstuffed, and they're, I won't even say B level Avengers. There's probably C level Avengers in those movies. So it's really nice to see them fleshed out here, and given time to breathe. So this episode ends with one more interesting thing. As I mentioned before, Bewitched started in black and white, and then it transitioned to color. Like they're transitioning to color.
Mm. And also, I would like to mention that the red is pretty much like the chaos magic that you saw.
Yeah.
In Endgame, with the battle with Thanos.
Red shows up a lot. Again, don't want to speculate right now about what that means, but I will say that red is not just Wanda's colors, but they're also Vision's colors. So in the toaster in the first episode, that was the only color that we saw in the entire episode, but it was a red light. The helicopter had Iron Man colors, which are yellow and red, but the red is definitely there. The cut was also red, the blood. So yeah, the red is showing up a lot in these episodes. And then the very end here, one thing I didn't mention earlier when we in the cutscene is that we heard the same thing that we hear at the end.
Who's doing this to you, Wanda?
So Wanda has some sort of control, but someone from the outside of, and we assume whoever's watching this, which we got from the first episode, is thinking someone is doing this to her. So it's interesting. Mysteries. Oh, and the ending here is very, very reminiscent of I Love Lucy. They would put the heart around Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I'd like to point out in the sweater vest that Vision had. I think I saw it from one of his comic runs. I think I'm not quite 100% sure about that, but just to point that out, it's very comic accurate.
Yeah. So I think this is a pretty good start to this series. There's a lot of these 2 episodes to analyze and reanalyze to see what's going on. What do you guys think?
I think Marvel accomplished what they set out to do with these first 2 episodes. I don't think it's any surprise they set it up this way. it's definitely getting people to ask a lot of questions, right? And it's getting them excited for more. And there are no clear-cut answers. It's definitely setting up a lot of questions, and everyone's now speculating. I was just checking online with some of the chatter, and there's so many people, just like the show Lost. They set up a lot of mysteries, and now it's getting people talking, and that's exactly what they want.
Hopefully, it's more satisfying than Lost at the end.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and I think that it's on the same vein. I think that it's definitely gets people talking. There's a lot of confusion as well, and I'm wondering if they did do like release the whole batch of WandaVision episodes all at once, would that they would probably take away a lot of the mystery and intrigue of it. So I think that Disney really had a good strategy in trying to make it weekly episodes to kind of heighten that sense of mystery and suspense.
Yeah, I don't think that they're ever going to drop them like Netflix does. I think they find that people will talk about them on a weekly basis, and they want people to want it to trend every week. So that's why they released The Mandalorian the way that they did. That's why Amazon released The Boys season 2 the way they did, because they released it all at once. They released Boys season 1 all at once, but they want you to talk about The Boys every week. And Disney wants you to talk about WandaVision for the next 9 episodes, right, Colin? You said.
I believe it's 9 episodes. Yeah.
So Disney wants you to talk about WandaVision until the Black Widow. Disney wants you to talk about WandaVision until the Black Widow movie comes out, basically, and then you're talking about the Black Widow movie, and then you're talking about the next Marvel thing after that. So
they definitely follow the trends.
Yeah.
So, and then, the way the calendar works is you're gonna probably talk about Marvel pretty much till the end of this year, basically. The way that it's stretched out or planned.
Yeah. Well, okay, guys. So that's what we think about this episode. We definitely want to hear what you think. So comment down below, and we'll have a video soon talking about our predictions about what's going on in these episodes. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.